Hello, everybody. Welcome. Please let me know if you could hear me because I know last time there were some issues, so I tried to find the quietest room. Welcome to the live experience that will bring you clarity today on people pleasing. So exciting. This is a highly requested topic. So just to give you some background, tonight's live stream will be around 25 minutes long. 20-minute mark, we'll take some questions and drop the questions in the chat anytime, and at the end I will try to get to them. Okay, awesome. A quick and important disclaimer: everything discussed tonight is for educational and entertainment purposes only, and obviously not a substitute for professional mental health, wellness, medical, or financial advice. Okay, so for those of you who are tuning in for the first time, or meeting me for the first time, my name is Rikki. I'm a life coach with a strong background in education, psychology, and a lot of the work I do is based on Viktor Frankl's logotherapy, which I'll share more about later. I'm excited about this topic of people pleasing because truth is, people pleasing can be such a drain. It affects people of all ages and stages, and I really want to share some strategies to help navigate it. So you can learn more about me at OKclarity.com, but let's dive into people pleasing. Okay, so what is the problem? Okay, people pleasing, we know it's a very common struggle, and often it's rooted in the fear of rejection or this need for external validation. And very often when we, fall into the people pleasing persona or the people pleasing habit, it leads to overcommitment. It leads to exhaustion. It leads us to neglecting our personal needs. And ultimately, it leads us to resent a lot. We resent others, we resent ourselves, we feel burnt out, we feel overwhelmed. Actually, a lot of people struggle with this. Apparently up to 80% of the population exhibits some level of people-pleasing behavior. And that's normal because it stems from a desire to be liked. And maybe there is 20% of the population that doesn't experience it. There are definitely people that don't experience it as strongly, but it is pretty common. And the reason it's so important to talk about this is because, yes, it's very nice to be a nice person that wants others to be happy. People-pleasing specifically can hinder personal growth. It can actually undermine self-worth. It can actually also weaken our relationships. So as a recovering people-pleaser, or I don't know how far into my recovery I am. I mean, you sort of go back and forth. People pleasing is a lifelong journey, but this topic really is empowering to me because it talks about, it's really about reclaiming our control over our lives and pursuing meaningful goals and building happier, more fulfilling relationships. So before I dive into some strategies and solutions for people pleasing, I want to kind of share a little background story. So like I said, I've always been a people pleaser. And when I was, I believe in high school, I was like at the worst part of my people-pleasing life. And I remember, it's pretty random, but I used to wear like a ponytail around my wrist, which I guess I stopped doing. But I guess, like sometimes you need to like put your hair in a ponytail in the middle of the day. And that was like important to me. I always needed to have it on my wrist. And I remember one day, like a random friend of mine, she wasn't even a good friend, just kind of went to my wrist and took the ponytail off and just took it and used it. And I felt so like violated. I know it sounds dramatic because it's like a ponytail. And I remember like working on this to take upon myself that I wasn't going to let anyone borrow my ponytail, which sounds crazy because I'm like, people are working on not gossiping, all these great things, and I'm working on not sharing so much, which I will share more about that. But that's a little teaser of my story. And I want to start sharing some solutions, and we'll weave in the ending to that ponytail story. So let's go, right? So what are some ways that you can manage this part of you that is, people-pleasing? Okay, so much of my solutions are focused, are based in Viktor Frankl's logotherapy. Probably not a live goes by that I don't mention Viktor Frankl. If you haven't heard of him, look him up. But anyway, he talks about one really important strategy, which is known as Socratic questioning, which comes from Socrates, right? One of the famous Greek philosophers. And the idea is asking really important, powerful questions. Okay? Now, Obviously, it's helpful if someone helps you do this, because when someone else asks you a question, sometimes that's easier, but you can do this with yourself also. And what you need to do is get to the bottom of what is motivating your actions. So for example, a question you might ask yourself: what is the deeper need behind my urge to please others, right? Because most of us have been taught something as a kid that if we do this, that's how we get attention. That's how we'll get liked, right? If we make a joke, oh, then no one will yell at us or whatever it is, right? We've been taught things as kids. And so very often that's part of where the people pleasing stems from. But either way, we want to understand, like, what's the need behind my urge to please others? And another question, right? Does saying no in this situation, does it contradict my core values? Okay, so asking these powerful questions are really, really important to uncover, like, why it is that we are stuck in this people-pleasing pattern. So 1 is Socratic questioning. Strategy 2 is something called paradoxical intention, which is a strategy I love using, also Viktor Frankl. And the idea is basically that sometimes this fear of not being liked actually intensifies the urge to please. And so what if we can consider the opposite, the paradoxical intention, right? What if I deliberately stop trying to win approval? Like, what might happen? Maybe go as far as saying, like, what if I make this person mad at me? Now, why is that important? Because shifting your perspective is what allows you to lessen your anxiety around saying no. Because let's face it, that's what it is. It's anxiety. It's anxiety about, what am I doing to my relationship if I say no to this person and don't please them, so to speak, right? So thinking, what if I make this person mad at me? And kind of going to that worst case scenario, right? What if I really just stop trying to win approval and everyone just gets mad at me? What might happen? And you might actually be surprised to learn that it's not as crazy as you think, right? So paradoxical intention always works wonders. Now, strategy number 3 is called dereflection. And dereflection, the basic idea of dereflection is reflecting outside of yourself. Sorry, I feel like when I touch the headphones probably causes noise, sorry. Dereflection is all about shifting our focus away from ourselves, okay? When we are constantly living in our own heads, and it makes sense to live in our own heads because we literally live in our own heads and we are the center of our own lives for good reason. Sometimes it's important to kind of get ourselves out of our own heads, and instead of focusing on me, and what are people going to think of me, and what are people going to say about me, take a step back and shift our focus away from that external validation, right? And instead of thinking about, how are others going to perceive me, we start thinking differently, dereflect. Maybe how to find meaning in my actions, right? How can I do something powerful? It's not all about just, what am I feeling? And that really helps us very often, kind of dereflect, get away from this feeling of, oh my gosh, I have to please everyone, right? Now, that is strategy 3. Strategy 4 is finding your why. And this is so important, okay? Because when you are able to figure out what truly matters to you in life, then it's really helpful, because then you ask another question. How does constantly saying yes to others hinder my ability to pursue those goals? Very often, we're saying yes to things, and what we don't realize is that every time you say yes to one thing, you're actually saying no to something else. And I might not realize it, that I'm saying no to something else, but I am. And so identifying our core values is so important, because it helps us make sure that when we're evaluating a situation, when we're evaluating whether we want to say yes or no to someone, whether we want to people please or not people please, we can make that decision pretty easily, because we understand that if we're saying yes now, we're saying no to something else. And if that other thing is more important than this thing, then that is pretty helpful, right? So finding our why, Identifying our core values and goals is so crucial in allowing us to connect our actions to our sense of purpose and in allowing ourselves to set important boundaries. Okay, so that's number 4. Number 5 is visualization. Okay, so this is really important. Visualizing. Now, actually take a moment and imagine yourself. Think of something in your life that's about to happen that you're going to want to people please. Someone's going to ask you for something, whether it's that friend asking you for the ponytail on your wrist or something a lot more intense than that. Sometimes though people pleasing, it can be the smallest things. Imagine yourself saying no to an unreasonable request and actually visualize the positive consequences. If I don't let this friend take my ponytail, I'm going to feel so much less stressed. I'm going to be able to put my hair back if it gets hot. And obviously further, right? So much more self-respect, and our relationships are healthier. We don't just let people take advantage of us. We don't just let people literally take the ponytail off our wrist, right? And it really helps us build healthier relationships. So this mental rehearsal, this visualization is so important because it builds confidence and helps give us some reassurance about what a real life situation, what a real life scenario actually might look like. And I know I'm giving like a trite example, but I think that's the thing with people pleasers. It doesn't really matter how big or small it is. It takes a toll on you anytime you feel like when you say yes to something that you really don't want to be saying yes to. And by the way, if you want to be saying yes to something, then you're not necessarily being a people pleaser in that moment. Like, you're allowed to say yes to something and not feel like, oh my gosh, I'm being a people pleaser. We're really talking about doing things just because you want to make other people happy when really it's detrimental to you. Okay? So that's what visualization accomplishes. Okay, our 6th and final solution here is the power of and. Okay, so people pleasers very often feel like they have to choose between their own needs and others' needs, right? The word and is something we don't always remember to use. A lot of times we say but, right? I want to do this, but start using the word and. So I'm already contradicting myself. Let's start using the word and. We don't have to choose between our needs and others' needs, and we can actually have both at the same time. How can I respect my own needs and maintain this relationship? Right? So it's all about how I can do both. And very often when we're younger, we think it's all or nothing. We don't really understand that we can hold two things at once and we can respect our own needs and maintain a relationship with someone else at the same time. And when we kind of have this and mindset, it allows us to have much more creative solutions to problems, and it can foster, more win-win scenarios. So that's really important. So we went through some 6 strategies, right? We talked about Socratic questioning, paradoxical intention, de-reflection, finding your why, visualization, the power of and. I want to address, though, something you might be feeling, which is, what if people are thinking I'm selfish? Because at the end of the day, right, isn't it a nice thing for me to lend someone my ponytail? Going back to that example, isn't it nice for me to do things for other people? Isn't the world built on chesed, olam chesed yibaneh, right? That's the Hebrew phrase. Isn't the world built on kindness? Shouldn't we be doing nice things for other people? Yes, 100%. However, and at the same time, the idea of self-care, and I don't love the term self-care, even though I actually like what it says, caring for oneself, I do think there's like a little bit of semantic overload in that term. Kind of, people just think it means like get a manicure, which it could be, but caring for oneself is just exactly what it sounds like, placing boundaries so that you can be a functioning human being, pretty much. And that is not selfish by any means. It allows you to be more present and more supportive in relationships. And we think by people pleasing, we're being more supportive in relationships. But what ends up happening when you people please? You do the thing, and then inside you're so angry, you're resentful. And they don't know it, but you know it. And it's so annoying, and it eats you up alive. And you almost wish they knew how resentful you were, but how would they know? You said yes, right? And so it's actually not like we're such amazing, right? Sometimes we think like, oh, people pleasers are the nicest, right? And it might seem so on the outside, but very often in the inside, they're feeling very resentful. And so we're not talking about others, we're talking about ourselves right now, but as our own person, right? We have to understand that self-care, caring for ourselves and putting boundaries in place so that we're not people pleasing our guts out, right? It's not a bad thing. It's actually something that allows us to be more present and powerful in relationships because it fosters respect. It allows for clear communication and you feel better, right? And we have this feeling of, but I can't let other people down, right? The thing is that we can utilize the power of ands, be patient with ourselves, and learn how to delegate a little bit. Learn how to say no politely. And true friends are going to understand and respect our limitations. It's very nice to be a yes man. And by the way, it's important to say yes sometimes when we don't want to do things, right? This isn't to absolve us from the responsibilities we have in life to, be kind, be good, help others. Sometimes there is the time to say, I'm not in the mood for this, but I'm going to do it. But that comes back to our core values, right? That's really what it is, right? If someone needs help and we don't really want to, we're saying yes to them, we're saying no to something else. But if our core values point us into the direction of, wait, that's a good thing to spend time on, that's a helpful, important thing, and you care about helping others, this family member, whoever it is, then you do it, right? But just having that mindset of, wait, is this in line with my core values? That already is a step further beyond just blindly people pleasing. So I guess what I'm trying to say here is don't just give up people pleasing completely, but give up blind people pleasing. Make sure you're intentional about your people pleasing. Make sure you consider your own feelings whilst pleasing others. And sometimes you can still manage both at the same time. And sometimes you can't. But you have to be empowered to make that choice and make that decision. And change takes time and it takes practice. You got to be patient with yourself and celebrate that progress, right? I remember in high school when I was like, okay, I'm going to keep this ponytail on my wrist all week and no one's going to take it from me and no one's going to steal it, right? And, at the end of that, I celebrated. I was proud of myself. I stuck to a boundary that I had. And yeah, it's amazing what can happen and how great it feels when you stick to your boundaries and when you care for yourself. So I'm just going to check if there's any questions because we are about ending at this point. I don't see anything on the Instagram, but feel free to write in. In the meantime, yes, boundaries are so important. Very true. I hope tonight's conversation provided some clarity on how to navigate people pleasing and that you walk away with some, essential techniques, some mindset shifts that will help you navigate this. And thank you so much for being here. I look forward to spending time with you again very soon.